All right, well, welcome. This is Storytime number 60. Does that make anybody think of anything?
Yeah, fine.
I was 60 once.
And
Your
my
most recent
impending
birthday.
age. My impending
I
age.
was 60.
Your impending age.
Senior
True,
age.
true. I didn't think of that. But what I was getting at is that it means this concludes the 5th year of Storytime. So next month, in at our March story, it will be Storytime's birthday again. Embarrassingly, I'm still very much working on book 4. So my entire future is now typing up and illustrating Storytimes. But we can still celebrate next month. Now, last year for Storytime's birthday? I'm not sure, but we have done it previously, like a folding story where people got to be write about Storytime characters. I thought that for next month's birthday, we might do something kind of similar, but I thought the folding story ended up a bit complicated. What might be fun is if I come up with an event that's happened, everybody's thinking of the same thing, but as a different character. So you pick somebody and think, what would what would they say about this situation? And we try and kind of have a Storytime library of reactions. So I thought that might be a fun game to play for next time. If anybody would like to do a little something from, think of it, your favorite character from Storytime, and perhaps come as them to the birthday edition. But today, our main themes for our dress ups and so on include guerrilla gardening, which I'm prepared for.
Yes.
And embarrassing things that you've accidentally gone to work or class in. I am wearing mine. When I was about 13, I used to in the morning always do my dance practice. So I would get dressed in all of my school uniform except my shoes. And I'd wear my Ugg boots and then put on my dancing shoes, do my practice, and then change into sensible shoes to wear to school after that. And one day, I suppose I didn't get time for my practice for some reason. I don't know what was going on, but I got to school and I rushing up to my classroom, and then some parents were coming back from dropping off their kids, and they just gave me a bit of a look. Well, what are they looking at? And I looked down and I still had my Ugg boots on.
I've gone to work in 2 different sneakers.
2 different odd shoes. That's a good one.
One Adidas and one whatever it was. And at the start of the PE lesson, the kids had to sit in the basketball circle, and I would stand in the middle. And this little girl in the front said, "Why are you wearing different shoes, Mr. Timmons?"
We've got lots of great gardening stuff in our pictures that I just want to point out before we begin. I'm loving the produce on the Fletcher table. There's also a hare in the garden, which is really exciting. How often do you get a hare in the veggie patch? I just want to pin you for a sec so we can have a look at the flamethrower.
Oh, it's the flamethrower.
The one that looks
That was Margaret when she read in Belgium, where it's
in Denmark.
Denmark, where it's always wet and that, and they use flamethrowers to kill the weeds, and it doesn't use poison, and it's very, very environmentally friendly. Until Margaret used it in Australia, where it's very dry, and a whole bush went up.
No, you used
I used it actually. I know it's a better story if you used it. And the whole bush went into flames.
You need to move the car.
Move the car. And our other theme, which I did throw in a bit at the last minute, because one of our topics today is the Birdman Rally. It's kind of hopeless flying apparatus. So I've got here my box bird, and my box bird is inspired by a real flying thing that somebody was using in one of the YouTube videos of Birdman rallies that I watched as research. They had a cardboard car. It was not a plane. It did not have wings. No, anything. It was a cardboard car. and they just held it above their head and jumped in. And that was it. So my box bird is in that vein of flying machines. But I see there's a cute little dog with a bit of some sort of wings on the Timmins table there.
Yes.
He's ready to fly. And I think Tegan's ready to fly.
Yeah, Tegan's ready to fly.
Got material wings.
I'm going to put my gardening tools aside now so I can sip my tea, and then I can go through the rest of our topics. So we added a lot of things that came off of the waiting list. I haven't managed to put everything that's currently waiting in. There are, I think, 5 things on the waiting list at the moment, but it's a lot better than it was, because there was a sort of a list of 12 or so things that had gone on the waiting list from previous stories. So we've covered lots of them. So we've got, of course, our mystery or guerrilla gardening happenings. When you realize you've gone to work or class wearing something embarrassing or inappropriate. The Birdman Rally. Forgetting to attend something you went to lots of trouble to plan or get tickets to or thought was really important. Mistaking cosmetic adornments for bugs. Injuries sustained in ridiculous ways. Where did I get this? Parental myths, interventions, or stories to get children to do things or to give them some rest. Mutual aversions and those weird childlike people who don't share them and want to poke the slimy thing or play with the thing that makes a horrible noise. Trying to dress when your body is damp. And I decided that since it is Lloyd's birthday week, I would have to squeeze in some rabbits. Included very briefly, like to a small extent, is the idea that Mum brought up of when you show someone something and they think it's a gift for them when it's really not intended that way. But I'm going to try and include that a bit more in a future story as well. So today's poem is called Overnight Bloom. A mystery is ever a source of wonder. Tiny as a surprise stone slipped into a pocket, or great as a forest grown overnight. Jack's beanstalk on the doorstep. Is the giant in, or is that just the creak of tall trunks in the wind? Things that grow are an evergreen spring, a well of wonder, seeming sudden sometimes in their verve and steadfast spirit, certainty they're fated to thrive. Just yesterday, the bare earth, baked by cracked bitumen and littered leavings of thoughtless passers-by, greyed out the possibilities. Put it on black and white film, and it could be an art exhibit. But the earth said, I ask for love, not ruin. Stale candy in the paving cracks, nourishing nothing. And someone heard. And today, green lushness lives in every gap, curb, or broken cup. The bloom of buzzing bee-filled beds replacing grim gravel and grime. It's almost tempting to think, perhaps the fairies do fly in when you sensibly go to sleep on time.
Nice.
And I forgot to say for that poem, I did use some prompts from some people who create prompt lists on Instagram. So there were 3 prompts by Jasmine, Bentkey Publishing, and LR Sterling Prompts gave me the bits. Art exhibit, I asked for love, not ruin, and stale candy. So today's story is entitled Detective Dina and the Grounded Fairies. The front window sported a soft white lace curtain that Alice's great-aunt Madison had insisted upon. Beyond its dappled shadows, outside by the road, was a long raised garden bed, brimming with daisies and smelling of fresh basil. Albie gazed out at it thoughtfully, his chin resting on his interlocked fingers, which he pressed into the back of the couch. The lace curtain rose and fell with a breeze, which carried the basil smell indoors. That was what had got Albie's attention. Because the thing was, the garden hadn't been there yesterday evening when he and Alice went to bed, and their daughter, Dina, had pretended to be asleep. Albie pulled up the hood of the rainbow onesie he'd purchased some years ago in London. The light breeze was a summery one, but keeping warm had never been one of Albie's strengths. The onesie hadn't really fit him before, but between them, Alice and her auntie had managed to let in all manner of new colourful panels like a patchwork. It had been declared unsuitable for wearing in public by Alice, who tended to worry about such things. Therefore, Albie was determined to wear it at home at almost all times. Dina, at least, was a fan of this choice. In her opinion, the more colours something had, the more suitable it was to wear anywhere. Dina ran into the room at this moment, looking as though she'd probably been awake all night with a book and showing no signs of slowing down. "Good morning, Kanga," Albie chirped, with the maximum enthusiasm he could muster on half a coffee. Albie had a reputation amongst friends and family for having an almost bottomless well of enthusiasm and dedication to things. This had been called into question sometimes of late, owing to Dina outdoing him in enthusiasm, sometimes at 2 a.m. "You're going to have to do a bit more sleeping if you want the fairies to have a chance to visit," he told her now, at the same time as trying to plan what surprises or magical signs the fairies could leave if Dina did, in fact, do more sleeping. Dina climbed up onto the couch beside him and jumped up and down, and Albie carefully pushed the end table holding his coffee a bit further away. "So who did that?" Dina inquired, pointing out of the window at the surprise garden. To be fair, it was the kind of thing Albie imagined fairies would do. "I don't know," he told her. "It's a mystery." Dina stopped bouncing momentarily to fix him with wide eyes. "A mystery? I'm going to solve the mystery." She started jumping again. This was where the nickname Kanga had come from. "The mystery of the flowers." Albie carefully had some more coffee. "Detective Dina," he remarked. Dina abruptly stopped jumping on the couch, got down and went to her room, returning moments later with a colourful A4 poster for the Moomba Festival. "Where did you get that?" Albie asked, turning his head sideways to look at it. "I don't know," Dina replied, not seeming bothered by this. "Did you know that at the festival, people make flying wings and try to fly down the river?" She pointed at a picture of someone with large, feathery fabric drapes stuck to their arms. Albie had heard about the Birdman Rally. In fact, he'd watched it a few times back when he was a student and a bit too preoccupied with philosophy questions to consider what it would be like to take part. But it was one of those things he'd known and at the same time kind of forgotten existed. "Yes," he said, his eyes lighting up with traditional Albie enthusiasm. "It looks fun, doesn't it?" Alice shuffled into the room now, her hair an alarming tangle on top of her head and a small frown nestling between her eyebrows. "Mummy, I'm going to be a flower detective," Dina shouted, making Alice wince and towing her mum by the hand to the window to see the new garden outside. "What time is it?" asked Alice. 6:30, answered Albie cheerfully, handing her the rest of his coffee. He got up to brew more, tucking his chilly fingers into the rainbow onesie's kangaroo pouch. "I think I'm going to enter the Birdman Rally," he added, heading for the kitchen before Alice's "What?" could discourage him. "It's really important for detectives to eat their vegetables," Albie told Dina at dinner, as she poked unenthusiastically at a Brussels sprout. Dina gave him a look very sceptical for a child so young and stood her fork on end against the tabletop, holding it upright in her fist. "Why?" "Well, carrots in particular are really good for night vision, which you'll need if you're planning on doing any stakeouts." Alice gave Albie an alarmed look over Dina's head. Not that that works very often, Albie added hurriedly. Most important clues are actually found during daylight hours. Alice sat back down with a mug of ginger tea, and Dina quickly speared some carrot on her fork. So do you really want to do the Birdman thing? Alice murmured with some wariness. Will you actually try to make something that can fly or just something silly? Albie put a Brussels sprout in his mouth. Dina, at the same time, did likewise. There was a pause, while both of them wrinkled their noses and turned their mouths down at the corners. Then, in unison, they made a sound like bleh and spat the offending vegetable back onto their plates. Still hate those, Albie grimaced. Why are these called food? Nina questioned, scratching up her face. You're both horrible, Alice told them. I love Brussels sprouts, and it's very rude to spit things out the table. If you know you don't like it, please just don't put it in your mouth to start with. The next morning, when Albie looked out at the lace-curtained window, a long line of sunflowers were waving in the wind, extending off down the previously empty footpath. They were planted into all kinds of receptacles that had once been rubbish. Wellington boots with peeling soles, watering cans with rusty holes, chopped off wheelie bins and cracked vases and bowls. Dina went carefully along the road with Alice, picking up stray petals and writing notes in an exercise book, such as dirt by neighbour cats. Meanwhile, Albie went into the garage and started trying to collect things that might be useful for making a flying craft. From watching previous Birdman rallies on YouTube, he deduced that Alice's question the previous night was an important one. Flying craft could either be genuinely designed to glide or float as far as possible before landing in the water, or they could be more intended to entertain, with little hope of doing more than dropping straight down into the river upon launching. Albie felt that both goals had merit, and of course, everyone entering was also fundraising for a good cause of some kind. However, he felt that for the pilot, taking part would be rather more fun if there was actually a chance to be temporarily airborne. While some of the flops were very amusing, they didn't look awfully comfortable. The wings, or flying apparatus, that seemed to do the most convincing job of flying in the videos were those resembling hang gliders or parachutes. Albie therefore imagined that he would need some kind of lightweight fabric. He looked hopefully at the two-person tent into which he and Alice had once squeezed themselves, their friends Jen and Cassie, their friends Jen and Cassie's kitten, and Cassie's mischievous galah, Crackers. Probably Alice wouldn't be too pleased if he repurposed the tent, he thought. Thinking of Jen and Cassie gave him an idea, however. These particular friends lived on a small farm and might have an excess of some kind of suitable material. He went to sit out the front by the mysterious new garden bed, taking a stool from the garage, and tapped into a video call with Jen. Jen took a moment to answer, and then did so looking a bit annoyed. She was sitting on the edge of the veranda that bordered the farmhouse where she and Cassie lived, a bag of potting soil leaning against the wall in her background. She pulled off a gardening glove from one hand as she answered, making her video lurch to the side. "What's up, Albie?" she asked in a forcefully cheerful voice. "Don't you have a fun weekend project to do with Dina or something?" Albie grinned. "I have a fun weekend project to do with everyone." Oh, great. Jen put her gloves aside as one of her 3 cats climbed into her lap and started awkwardly trying to settle on her knees. "What are you up to this time?" She rubbed her eyes, looking sleepy. Albie thought this was a bit dramatic of her, considering Jen didn't live with Dina. "I'm going to do the Birdman Rally this year," he announced with a little bounce in his seat. Cassie appeared in Jen's background, also looking rather tired, and sat down next to Jen, putting an arm around her. Hello, Albie. What exciting idea are you calling us with today? He's going to do that Birdman thing, Jen told her. I'm still waiting to hear what our role in this is supposed to be. Albie gave her an unimpressed look. I need a team, of course. I'm calling upon the White Cedar Flat family to help me make flying apparatus. Cassie looked at Jen. Are random projects at any time of the year included in your solstice pact? Jen shook her head. We'll cheer you on, of course, Albie, but we do have other jobs to do besides building you a pair of wings. Albie pouted. Cassie sighed and gave Jen a significant look. Jen tapped on her screen, covering the camera for a moment with her hand, and a second later, their friend Elena appeared on the call, carrying a strange contraption full of hay. Just a minute, she said, leaning down to place the object on the floor. Daffodil, Elena's rabbit, immediately appeared between her arm and the camera, and Jen shouted, Bunny! Immediately brightening. So what's up? Elena asked, sitting back on the floor with the rabbit on her lap. Daffodil stuck her head forward out of the frame and returned to Elena's lap with a long piece of hay, which slowly shortened as it disappeared into her mouth. Albie has a project, Jen told her, raising her eyebrows significantly. Ah, replied Elena, giving her a knowing smile. What are you making us do now, then? This was directed at Albie, who shrugged, widening his eyes in innocence. I'm just looking for ideas for a Birdman flying craft. I was wondering if anyone had any old tent fabric or parachute stuff. Elena smirked and gently set Daffodil back on the floor. I'll be over for lunch. Go cook things. Jen and Cassie looked at one another. All right, we'll be there, Jen relented. Albie beamed. See you in a bit. He hung up the call, leaving the others looking at each other with a mixture of amusement and annoyance. Did anyone else kind of think he was going to slow down now he has Dina's exuberance to deal with? Cassie asked. Jen and Elena laughed at her. What? Replied Jen. Albie, hang out with a kid and not just come up with more over-enthusiastic childlike plans. While the sushi rice was cooking, Albie had turned his attention to working out a costume to wear when flying. Despite the fact that most pilots only got a few seconds in the air before they plunged into the Yarra River, attire was taken pretty seriously. Luckily, ever since Alice had done a film course, she'd developed a habit of collecting unusual items of clothing and accessories that she thought at the time would make good costume pieces. All Albie needed to do was work out what kind of bird, pilot, alien, dinosaur, kite, or aircraft he wanted to resemble. However, whilst he was going through the costume box, Albie was also helping Dina to construct a detailed map of their street, onto which she was writing, or asking Albie to write, various clues about the flower mystery from her exercise book. As a result, Albie was switching back and forth between trying on helmets and metallic gold jackets and adding dropped plant pot and dug up dirt and so forth to Dina's piece of paper on demand. When the other members of the White Cedar Flat family arrived at the door, Alice let them in and rushed back to finish the last round of her exercise routine. They found Albie happily rolling sushi rolls in the kitchen, wearing a beanie with a dragon crest attached, his patched rainbow onesie, and a large shawl covered in fine fake feathers, which Dina had helpfully, but not very symmetrically, safety pinned onto his back. Dina had her map and her notes on the kitchen benchtop. Do you agree, Dad, that it's impossible for it to be Gwen next door putting the plants there because we can hear when she opens her door? Elena had a look over Dina's shoulder. Ah, detective work. I did think you'd managed a lot of gardening very fast out there, Albie. Yeah, nice sunflowers, Jen told him with a grin. It's not just our house, Dina reported excitedly. It's all of this street and the empty bit by the shops. And I think the mystery gardener will do the spot by the crossing next because it's just dirt and gravel. Her eyes widened. I know. We can leave your phone on the wall there and video who comes. Albie pulled a face. Well, I don't want to leave my phone out in the street for anyone to take or the rain to ruin, Kanga. He chopped a sushi roll carefully into thirds. But if you prepare properly by going to sleep early the night before and eating all your carrots and making a plan to write your report, maybe we can take the car down by the shops and do a stakeout to see for ourselves. Dina bounced up and down in her seat. Yes, yes, yes. Jen wandered into the next room and Cassie busied herself putting the kettle on. Dina slid off her stool then and went towards Albie to give him a hug. But suddenly she leapt backwards, letting out a shriek. Centipede! Centipede! She scrambled back up onto the stool, pulling her feet up so that she was perched pretzel-like on top. Then she pointed, horrified, at the floor near Albie's feet. There certainly seemed to be a long, dark, windy shape with many gently waving legs on the ground. Albie very quickly put down the sushi knife and took a big step back, and everyone else crowded back into the kitchen to peer over at the offending bug. It was moving fractionally, but remaining in position as though eating or investigating that part of the floor. Then a breeze wafted through the kitchen, and multiple shouts and squeals of alarm erupted as the shape made a sudden movement across the tiles. The style of movement, however, gave it away. Whatever the thing was, it was too light and flimsy to be a real centipede. Alice laughed. Oh, Albie, it's just one of those little feathers that's come loose. She plucked at the shawl pinned to his back. See? She held one up from the fabric so that everyone else could see how it matched the object on the floor. There was a chorus of, oh, and sighs of relief. Shall we eat some sushi and see if we can design some wings then? Albie asked, recovering. Back out in the garage, Jen set down a large bag. I brought something that might interest you material-wise, she announced. This is a parachute thing we used to use for party games when I was little. She unfurled a colourful circle of light fabric that almost covered the entire garage floor. It resembled a flattened hot air balloon. These just come from like toy or party shops, I think, she continued, hoping to prompt Albie to search for local sources. Albie, however, had grabbed the fabric, eyes shining with enthusiasm, and promptly poked a needle through one of the seams to see if he could bind it onto a piece of irrigation hose. Or you could keep this one and totally destroy it, Jen added, with a somewhat forced grin. By dinner time, Albie had a set of rough parachute fabric wings stretched over a framework of irrigation hose and was dancing up and down the garage with Dina, who now had the feathered shawl on, flapping and squawking. I think we've done our bit for today, Jen remarked. Cass and I should probably go finish a few farm chores before it gets dark. Cassie gathered up the bags and containers they'd brought over, which were now much lighter than when they'd arrived. She froze midway through clipping the lid onto one of the boxes. Oh, shoot, Jen, we were supposed to be at the meeting. Elena eyed them with interest. Meeting? Jen and Cassie didn't answer Elena, but looked at each other wide-eyed. Oh, no, Jen exclaimed. I had that cake in the fridge and everything. They're going to think we're unreliable now. Was it a pride thing? Elena pressed curiously. Why didn't you invite us? Cassie shook her head. No, just a community thing we were trying to get involved with. Elena, Alice and Albie waited for more of an explanation, but Cassie and Jen just quietly finished packing up and set off for home, seeming a little subdued. Albie quickly got into the habit of spending a little time each morning on his costume and wing design. It had been mutually agreed during the weekend design session in the garage that he ought to be dubbed the Rainbow Lorikeet for the Birdman Rally, such that the rest of his costume could fit with the bright rainbow colours of the parachute fabric. In Albie's opinion, this was a good reason for the rainbow onesie to be allowed out in public. He'd spent some time sewing feathers onto it, which proved to be a bit of a failure. They kept escaping their stitching and falling off in various places around the house as he ran after Dina or cleaned his teeth or looked for something that was suitable to wear out in public. Then they caused him several strange injuries when he stepped on them or got them caught in his clothes. Dina wanted Albie to put face paint on for the rally, and she wanted him to let her put it on him. Albie was moderately enthusiastic about this, but he explained to Dina that it would wash off when he inevitably crashed into the water, and this seemed to curb her enthusiasm somewhat. On Wednesday, Dina came home very excited on two fronts. First, it was now closer to the following weekend than to the start of the week, which meant that the promised stakeout was approaching. Second, she had learned from a peer of the existence of two cosmetic items, which she believed would fare better than face paint during Albie's brief dunk into the Yarra. Feathery hair extensions, according to the reliable intel supplied by Dina's 5-year-old friend whose sister had some once, would stay in for some time and could make Albie's hair appear long and crest-like. There were also, according to the same friend, eyelash extensions which had feathery tips and would survive a brief dip in the water if applied long enough in advance. Having either of these adornments professionally applied, however, was an expensive business, which Albie felt went a bit against the concept of a fun charity fundraising event. So, for the next 2 mornings, Albie got up as early as possible and practiced attaching colourful feathers to his hair and gluing on, then removing, fake eyelashes. On Friday morning, Dina slipped over on a bit of parachute fabric that had been missed in Albie's latest sweep-up. She was fine, having fallen onto a pillow, which just happened to have dropped on the floor moments earlier. However, upon falling down on her back, Dina happened to look underneath the living room dresser and notice a small rubber bouncing ball, which she had lost some weeks beforehand. She promptly slid her arm under the dresser in an attempt to retrieve it. This seemed like a reasonable plan until she gripped the ball, rotating her arm, tried to withdraw her hand again, and found that her elbow was lodged between the bottom of the dresser and the floor. "Dad, my arm won't come out," she yelled through the doorway to where Albie was midway through his hair and eyelash practice in the bathroom.
Oh, no.
Albie made his way into the living room, squinting past the false eyelashes on his left side, which he hadn't quite positioned correctly. He tried to pull them off again before they stuck fully and poked himself in the eye. "Ow," he muttered. He looked at the dresser. It was large and made of solid wood, and he definitely wouldn't be lifting it up by himself to free Dina's elbow. Alice had already gone to work, so Albie got down on the floor and stretched his own arm out in an attempt to demonstrate how Dina needed to rotate her elbow to unstick it. "Let go of the ball," he told her. "We'll use a stick to get it later. Now put your hand flat so you can turn your arm like this." Dina followed his instructions and her arm came unstuck with a very slight shift and thunk. A piece of paper that somebody had left on top of the dresser was somehow dislodged by this minute movement. It floated down very gracefully, much as Albie hoped to descend from the pier when he took part in the Birdman Rally. Then it slipped lightly past Albie's arm and gave him a large paper cut, coming to rest safely on the carpet. "Ow," Albie complained again. Dina had a look. "Better get a band-aid," she remarked, getting to her feet and stepping on the rubber ball, which must have been dislodged when she withdrew her arm. Dina stumbled a bit, regained her footing, went to proceed out of the room, and then got hit in the nose by the ball, which had bounced away when she trod on it and ricocheted back off the opposite wall. Albie sat Dina down with the frozen peas on her nose and a tissue, and then mopped up his arm, disinfected it, and put on a band-aid. Minor injuries attended to. He and Dina both got quickly changed, and he dropped her off at school and rushed to the university for his 9 a.m. lecture. On the tram, Albie felt that some of the other passengers were looking at him a bit too much to be polite. He was used to occasionally drawing alarmed glances, having once gone into a van hire place in a giraffe onesie, and generally being the kind of person to display more public exuberance than others felt comfortable with. He couldn't work out, however, what could possibly be particularly interesting or noticeable about his navy blazer and black jeans, an outfit that was Alice approved for lecturing in. He didn't work it out until he stood at the front of the lecture theatre, looking into the currently black screen of the computer attached to the projector. Students were filtering in and taking their seats, a few squinting curiously at him and murmuring to each other. Albie's reflection stared back from the dark screen, mismatched eyes looking like some kind of Picasso painting, with the false lashes attached on the right, but not the left. The look would have been an interesting one, Albie felt, had it at least been symmetrical. In his hair, a row of feathers remained like a sort of lopsided mohawk. All in all, he looked as though he'd had some kind of big night out and turned up in no state to teach at all. Albie sighed to himself, flashed a mischievous grin at the students who were already seated and staring, and pulled up a blank slide onto which he typed "Conventions of Symmetry." Some improvisation was going to be required. Delving back in his mind to his childhood theatre class days, Albie proceeded to carry the lecture theatre along with him on a lesson entirely unplanned, convincing them that his looks were intentionally strange to make a point. Only when the computer clock showed 1 minute of lecture time remaining did Albie tell the class the true but unlikely story of his morning. They left grinning and loudly debating, some cross, some delighted. Then Albie went into the nearest toilets and spent half an hour returning his hair and eye to normal. "Why didn't you tell me I had one eye on and one eye off?" he demanded later when he picked Dina up from school. Dina shrugged. "I thought you did it on purpose." Albie eyed her skeptically. Then he thought about his lecture and decided this was probably fair enough. When they got home, Albie spent an hour or so gluing feathers onto his rainbow onesie, while Dina worked on the form she was designing to be her official detective report on tomorrow's stakeout. The craft glue made Albie's fingers all tacky, and by the time his onesie was sufficiently bird-like, he had a little sticky ball of semi-dried glue in his fingertips. He was rolling it backwards and forwards between his finger and thumb, making little sucky sounds as he shifted the stickiest bits, when Alice and Dina both entered the room. They both began to say something, then stopped, looking in horrified unison at the sticky glue ball, and shuddered. Alice turned her gaze away so she couldn't see Albie squishing the glue back and forth, and Dina put her hands over her ears. "Albie," Alice groaned, "please put that gross thing in the bin and wash your hands. Ugh." Albie wandered off reluctantly to the bathroom and sadly relinquished the semi-dried glue into a tissue, giving it one last satisfying squish for good measure. In the morning, Albie woke to the sound of Dina clattering about in the kitchen. He shuffled out, hauling on his old giraffe onesie since the rainbow one needed more time to dry. Dina was standing on a chair so that she could reach the cupboard where Alice put things like crackers and sweet things for special occasions. Albie cleared his throat, and Dina glanced unconcernedly over her shoulder at him. I'm preparing a stakeout survival kit, she explained. Energy food is essential. Have you been eating your veggies and sleeping lots in preparation? Albie asked sternly. Yes, Dina replied, climbing down. Look, I even got some carrot to bring along. She showed him a box of neatly chopped carrot sticks, and Albie tried not to imagine her standing on a chair to cut them up. Since both his wings and his costume were now as prepared as they were going to get, Albie spent the day helping Dina plan her stakeout operation. They packed torches, went shopping for batteries, took pictures of the current state of local streets, and prepared backpacks with snacks, water, lights, notebooks, pens, and even an old dictaphone that Albie, for some reason, had in his desk drawer. Then Albie sent Dina to have a nap and sat down with Alice at the dining table. Alice was painting patterns onto some air-dry clay beads and threading them onto a string. How's the Birdman meeting thing earlier? She asked. I haven't seen you all day. Albie stopped with his mug of tea halfway to his mouth. What? He trailed off. The Birdman Rally registration meeting. He was supposed to have been at the information session this morning, learning the rules and putting his name down to compete. He pushed his tea away and dropped his head dramatically onto the table, a little too hard so that he'd probably have a bruise later. I forgot to go. Alice stopped painting and gave him an incredulous look. Oh, I don't think so. We'll find a way to get you in. I'm not having all the glue and feathers and parachutes taking up the garage be for nothing. Albie gave her an appreciative look, but he wasn't very hopeful. You could register online, but attending an information session first was compulsory. Mm-hmm. When dusk fell, a somewhat subdued Albie and a very excited Dina put on their least colourful clothing, grabbed their special stakeout backpacks, and drove the car to a spot just one street down from the crossing, where Dina expected the mystery gardeners to make their appearance to improve the state of the median strip. They turned off the engine, and Dina got out her special report form. At first, she watched very closely, glancing from the shopping centre to the crossing and back again. But after a while, predictably, she started to look tired. Soon, she pulled out the little container of lollies and began eating them and doodling in her form's margins. Careful, Albie whispered. Sugar can make you jump to conclusions. You might get taken in by a red herring. Albie was just about ready to convince Dina to go home when he saw something shifting in the shadows behind the supermarket hedge. He nudged Dina and sat forward in his seat, squinting. Dina looked too, frowning. That's something small like a cat, she decided, sitting back again. Then the rabbit hopped its way slowly around the hedge and sat, nose twitching, beneath the yellow glow of the street lamp. Those aren't supposed to be here, Dina murmured, looking fascinated just the same. But that's not what I'm here to detect. Albie watched the rabbit, frowning. Look closely, Dina, he whispered. What's the rabbit eating? Dina leaned forward and peered into the gloom. I need more carrots, she remarked. Is it parsley or something? Albie nodded sagely. Where did it get parsley from? Over there, he asked, raising an eyebrow. Dina rested her arms on the dashboard, practically climbing through the windscreen in an attempt to see better. A figure, dressed all in black with a wide-brimmed hat keeping their face in shadow, stepped around from the shopping centre car park and held down a large backpack with a window in it, which the rabbit jumped into. Then the figure disappeared back behind the hedge and returned with a tray of small plant pots, all containing herbs, the rabbit backpack now on their shoulders. Albie grinned. That's not just any rabbit, Dina. That's Scrunch. He's an adventure bunny. He pointed to the human. And that is a person named A, if I'm not totally imagining things. The dark-clad figure was followed by several more, all carrying plants and soil and moving silently. Dina scribbled on her report. I can't tell who any of them are, she hissed, looking worried. Well, smiled Albie, take some notes anyway. You never know what might be important. The gardeners began assembling raised beds, tipping soil and pouring water from tanks they carried quickly back and forth from behind the hedge. When the planting itself got underway, the perfect organisation and quiet was shattered by one of the group jumping backwards and loudly exclaiming, "Shit, white-tailed spider!" There was a lot of rushing about and checking of gloves. Then the first figure leaned cautiously forward, peering at the dirt with a phone torch. Oh, for heaven's sake, they snapped. The voice seemed oddly familiar to Albie. It's a bloody false eyelash. There was some murmuring and giggling. Shh, someone else snapped. But Dina's eyes had already grown wide, and Albie didn't think it was due to the swearing. That's Jen, she breathed, isn't it? Albie smiled. I think so. Shall we sneak over and see them? I don't think they'll mind as long as you don't send that report anywhere. In the early hours, the guerrilla gardeners, having completely transformed the median strip by the crossing, slunk quietly home. Jen and Cassie whispered promises to tell Albie and Dina the whole story later, and Albie and Dina crept back into their house and carefully cleaned the dirt from under their nails before slipping into bed. It wasn't until morning that Albie remembered that he'd lost his chance to fly as the Rainbow Lorikeet at this year's Moomba Festival. He sat morosely stirring his coffee, rather later than usual, as Dina still slept soundly. Presently there was a knock at the door, and Alice came in, with Jen and Cassie in tow. Albie glanced up at them. You don't have to help with the wingsuit anymore, he told them sadly. I forgot to go to the information talk, and now it's too late to enter. Jen and Cassie looked at each other. Well, actually, Jen pulled a piece of paper out of her pocket. The thing is, Cass and I are kind of on the committee. I took the liberty of entering you quite a while ago. Albie blinked at them. What? It was supposed to be a birthday surprise, and I was going to pilot if you didn't want to. Jen held out the sheet of paper. It listed the Rainbow Lorikeet as a competitor, along with Albie, Alice, Jen, Cassie and Elena as team members. I assume you're okay with supporting regreening as your charity, Cassie said. Albie stared at her. Wait, is the overnight gardening legitimate? Cassie laughed. Yeah, sort of. We're volunteering. But why are you doing it in the dark? Albie asked, befuddled. Jen spread her hands. Well, most people have day jobs. Plus, we are using a lot of creative license about where exactly the gardens can go. Albie grinned. On the day of the Birdman Rally, everyone came over to help pack and transport Albie's wings. Dina was in charge of a checklist, which she'd also written, and was skipping about looking important and ticking things off seemingly at random. They arrived at the pier, and everyone helped unload the wings from the roof of the car, ducking as the irrigation hose structure kept unfolding rapidly like a spring and threatening to hit them. Albie looked around, peering past the feathered bits on his false eyelashes, which darted in and out of the edges of his vision. There was some other serious glider-like craft nearby, one of which seemed to be made of bubble wrap. Then there were some clearly less airworthy candidates, such as a young person with masses of balloons attached to both arms and back, and what looked like a large foam hot dog. The others helped Albie step into the space in the middle of his wings and held the ends of the large parachute sails off the ground as they watched similar, but a heavier set of wings overbalance their pilot and send them nosediving for the river the moment the other team members let go. Glad yours are light, laughed Elena. She, Alice and Dina moved down the bank to get a good vantage point, while Jen and Cassie helped carry the craft onto the pier. The weird thing was that afterwards, Albie didn't really remember running forward with Jen and Cass and leaping out solo over the water. He didn't remember the tiny but merit-worthy glide that his wings made. He saw all this on the video that Dina took on Alice's phone. But what he remembered was the surfacing and swimming, climbing out, feathers falling from the onesie like huge rainbow droplets where the glue gave way. He remembered Alice bringing his bag and pulling out his spare clothes to discover that he had no towel, and wrestling with sleeves that had suddenly become like glue over his damp skin, and jeans that stuck down in weird places so they looked lumpy and misshapen. Most of all, he remembered everyone disappearing to a spot just out of sight behind the commentator's tent, Jen tugging him by the elbow to follow, to see a magnificent new garden bed, planted with herbs and veg, and with flowers to form a bright petalled rainbow. He remembered Cassie handing him the violets to plant to complete it.
Oh.
He remembered getting home, the wings and costume held in a soggy garbage bag, and opening the backpack he'd packed to find inside a new, dry, intact, correctly sized rainbow onesie, and a new non-faded giraffe onesie, which had a patch of zebra stripes and embroidery reading "Everything at Once." Finally, there was a tiny Polaroid photo of a window looking out on a white cedar tree. "Where did I get this?" he asked, holding one of the onesies up. Dina came over to have a look, face paint smudged on her cheeks and an ice block dripping onto the floor in her hand. "Did you eat your veggies and go to sleep on time?" she asked him seriously. "Mostly," Albie replied, thinking of the late night gardening and Brussels sprouts. Dina shrugged and spread her hands. "Then it was the fairies," she answered, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. Albie smiled, giving her a squeeze. "You're probably right, Kanga," he said. And in his head, he added, "And their names are Jen and Elena and Alice and Cassie and Dina."
Gorgeous. That was fun. Love it.
Okay, so for our March story and Storytime's 5th birthday,
Yeah. God.
what topics would we like? Has anybody got anything?
I thought of two, one of which actually came from something Andrew said about your new address. And he said, Sarah should live on a road called Wood Farm.
Oh, yes.
So when either your name or the name of where you live is somehow incredibly appropriate to you, or incredibly not so.
There was a doctor. There was a doctor in Adelaide called Dr. Death.
Yes, there was.
And there's a orthopedic surgeon called Dr. Kneebone in Adelaide as well.
Oh,
Oh, my God.
that's a good
You
one.
don't make these up, do you?
And the other one that I don't know how this came up. Oh, it must have been something I was doing today, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to end up like, and I thought of a character in a novel. So when you actually start to resemble, oh, I know what it was. I washed my hair and it all did this. And I thought, oh, I look like that character in that game. I look like Flicky Hair Lady.
Flicky Hair Lady in Camelot.
Yeah.
Isn't that my thing?
Yeah,
Camelot, is it?
when you start to look like a character from a board game or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do 5 years, you've got to do 5-year plans.
Oh, yeah.
Oh God, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
5-year
Jeez.
plans and new deals.
I found a spreadsheet that I did when we first moved into this house. It was called the Fletcher 5-year plan.
Yeah,
Have you
And I
finished it
listed
yet?
out everything we needed to do to this place and this house and stuff like that. And actually, it's funny. I did a lot of it, I mean, a lot of it over 20 years. But it's still not quite complete. The 5-year plan.
that's right.
The trouble is
I like
with them,
it, Barry.
as we're
That's a
currently
really good
discovering-
suggestion.
Sorry, Mark. As we're currently discovering, you have to do it all again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that.
Just-
I'm almost finished the first round
Yeah.
through.
I was going to say, and you getting the name mixed up of the dog brings us to something that happened while I was on my way back home tonight.
Huh?
I said, Mum and Dad were saying, they're like, oh, have you got a straw hat? You know, you can wear a straw hat. And I said, oh, no, I can't because I'm wearing my hair up and I can't put a hat on. And Mum goes to Dad, Charmaine's got a messy bun. Because I said to Mum, I've got this nice messy bun that I've done.
Yeah.
And Dad was like, she's got a messy bum. And I was like, that just took Dad back 30 years.
How old is Charmaine, Ma?
But it can be quite entertaining. My mum always said that because my mum had glaucoma, and our mum, Jane and my mum, and she didn't have terrific eyesight. You know, she wasn't blind or anything, but she didn't have great eyesight. But she said it could be quite entertaining the way you mistook something for something else.
Yeah.
And one time I turned up to her place with a scarf that actually Janie had given me and had all these, it was woolen, had all these dangling triangles. And as I was approaching the door, Mum came out to greet me and burst into laughter. And I'm like, what? And she thought I'd hung tea bags around my neck on the scarf.
I can see why that would look that way. So there are a few things still on the waiting list that I can pop in as well. So I'll do those. One of which it was navigating virtual environments, and I was going to try and have someone in this story like construct Albie a virtual version of, you know, the jump into the water so he could practice or something, but it just was a bit too much of a stretch, a bit too unlikely. So I decided that one has to wait. So we'll see if I can get the virtual environments in next time. Oh, the humor in fading eyesight. Well, that goes with the misseeing.
Definitely.
How about having an abundance of produce? Because
Having abundant produce, yeah. Oh, that's a nice one.
just today alone, we picked 28 kilograms off the tree, and that was the last of it. So we reckon we've had 100 kilos of plums.
Wow.
2 trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've made plum leather. We have
Plum
froze
Plum
pureed
sauce.
plums
Yeah.
Frozen. Yeah.
in cubes.
I've given away at least 30 kilos of plums to work and friends.
Amazing.
Top
We've
of
given
2
a lot.
plum trees.
Factor in 4 other features too. Possums, aphids.
Oh, animals stealing the fruit. Yeah, that's the but parrots and all the lorikeets and rosellas come
And Willa.
Yeah, and river now.
just to eat your fruit.
Yeah,
Okay.
the cockatoos and the galahs get the almonds, and the dog gets the nectarines now.
And the possum gets the
Whatever's left.
tomatoes.
Yeah, whatever's left.
So you don't get much out of your garden because all
No,
the
no,
animals
no.
eat it.
No, we've got very fat creatures.
Appropriately, one of the things on the waiting list was too many animals.
Definitely.
One might be too many, Sarah.
Yes, so when one is too many.
When one is too many.
Right, so there's a connection between too many animals and having an abundance of produce, or rather, maybe not.
Could be.
So the other thing I wanted to get a bit more of the, when someone thinks the thing, you're just showing them as a present for them. And the other thing that was still on the waiting list was applying your sports or like your niche etiquette where it's not appropriate to other situations. So that one will be interesting. I think all these other things are quite cohesive. So we've got now when your name or the name of your street or something is super appropriate to you, or perhaps inappropriate in the case of doctor death and things like that. When you start to resemble or seem like a character, 5-year plans, dramatically mishearing things or seeing things completely wrong, the humor in fading eyesight, having an abundance of produce, when someone thinks a thing you're showing them as a gift, too many animals, and the sports etiquette thing.
On that sports etiquette, I can imagine Andrew. Andrew, do you use a polishing cloth for your bowls?
Yep. Yes.
See, I can imagine him whipping it out at table and like having a go at someone's apples and things like that and putting them back in the fruit bowl.
Yeah, this bowl isn't very glossy. I'll polish it up with my bowls cloth.
Charmaine and Mark could use their hockey stick to pull down the high branches of the plum tree to get all the
Like more like alternative uses for your sporting equipment.
Yeah. Make that a bit wider, maybe.
Yeah,
because that is very specific, like specifically sort of your etiquette or rules from the sport. I
have had to get the hockey stick out it's been the day that the cat goes to the vet, and the cat is under my bed, and I have to just just give her a little nudge on the bum and try and get her out. Catfishing.
I love a meaning to catfishing.
I've actually used one of the kettlebells.
Use a cat on cue.
Okay, so alternative uses for sporting equipment can be kind of
I've used the kettlebell for a doorstop as well.
Oh yeah. I've done that one.
Because it's blowing a gale inwards, and I'm trying to drain the fish tank. I'm going to put hoses and keep the door open. The door keeps flying open and putting in. This is a winter thing.
Yeah.
So I just grabbed one of the kettlebells and just.
They're good for that. You need something really a decent weight sometimes for doors.
Yeah.
You've used kettlebells to press tofu.
That's another good use.
Kettlebell on the top.
Well, I've certainly used that kettlebell more for a doorstop than I've used it as a kettlebell.
Sounds good.
We've used it to like flatten cardboard or like paper or whatever that got a bit wet and it went all bendy. We put it like a cutting board on and then the kettlebell
on top. Yep. They're pretty useful kettlebells.
Use it to tag your animal to.
We've used one to tie up our friend's dog when Lloyd had the door open because he was on his bike. We like attached it to the
phenomenal.
Hair ties.
Yeah. It's like Margaret's hair ties. I use them.
A hair tie is a great thing. Yeah, it's very diverse.
I use them for everything. I thought I'd write a book, 101 uses of your wife's hair tie. I use them for everything.
So, same date for March, and probably for dress up themes, we'll do a character one. So it can be anything, or character, or anything that is like your favorite bit, a significant thing from a past story. So
That'd be good.
if there was an object you really liked, a tree and a watering can, you could bring a tree and a watering can. Or you can dress up in your giraffe onesie and be Albie.
Is the character list going to be the characters that have appeared in this last year?
All of them.
Any of them.
It could be from earlier, but I could highlight which ones are from the last year that's just been. I could like put a block on that one so that yeah, you could choose from the ones that
Have
are.
you ever appeared? I mean, Albie's just appeared in every year. So
Albie's always there. Yeah, I think most of the ones that would be favourites probably will have popped up in the last year.
Albie's everybody's favourite.
Grease is mine.
Grease the dog is Dad's favourite character.
I like Betty and Fraser.
Yeah.
I like it very much.
Sarah, when you were saying that we could write our like point of view from each character, I was like, if I'm Grease, do I just say woof? Like
All right. So hopefully seeing you all again in March. So fun. I'll send the character list and the little idea about doing the different character points of view if you want to contribute a character to that. But we might have to we don't want too many of the same, so we might have to do a some kind of character claiming sheet or something. Let people choose who they want to be if they're going to write a little character point of view. But there are lots to choose from. I won't put in some of the more like less common characters who we haven't seen very much, because that might be a bit hard, but the ones we know well will all be on the list, and there should be enough to go around. But don't all fight over Albie. I'd love ideas of situations you'd like to put them in, and we could maybe have a bit of a vote on which one we actually end up doing. That might be fun. So if you've got ideas of a situation you'd like to put all of the Storytime characters into.
Well, ones that have worked well and that some would hate and some would love, and some would get up to mischief in, would be that like sporting ones.
Yes.
Or very formal ones would be good.
A grand
like a masquerade
or masquerade.
Yeah. Like a fundraising masquerade or something.
I might write that one down. So a masquerade ball, some maybe being forced to be in some kind of sporting game.
Camping mishaps.
Camping, yeah.
Actually, some people don't like camping.
No, well, some of the characters probably wouldn't like it, would they? You can choose one who doesn't like it if you want.
It could all be at a circus.
Yeah. At a circus.
Margaret said.
On a train, Sarah.
On a train, like Murder on the Orient Express.
Yes.
Like reality TV shows that are not as intense as Survivor, but like, or like Family Feud, or like a TV show that's like normal people are put in, and I'm not sure which one though.
What about that concept of a makeover?
A makeover.
So either houses or characters, they win a makeover.
Yeah. Yep.
No, I'm not saying
You've been selected to have a makeover.
Yeah.
Well, that might be quite fun. How would each of them respond if they got this? Cole, you've been selected for a makeover with so and so. What's
I would really go.
What you're writing is their reaction. Yeah. All right, those are good. Well, there are lots of options there. I'll have to think, and also think about whether or not any of them are combinable things into a very complex situation. We'll see. If you think of any more situations that we could put them into, send them all over, and I'll try and pick one, or maybe I'll do a little poll and we can all vote, and we'll see where we'd most like to see them. That concludes year 5 of the Storytime project.
Yeah, well done.
See you again.
Thank you. Story, Sarah. Wow.
Wow. That was great.
Good night, Jane.
Everybody.
Good night.